the machine elves. This is actually my second video because they're playing with me now. And that's how I see it here. It's a game. And so in my last discussion, Is This a Prison Planet? And the one before that, Defunding the Matrix, I've had a whole lot of new clients who are as conscious as I am and probably more intelligent than I am, that have a lot of resources around what is this realm and what's going on here. So this is the second time I've made this video because the first one disappeared. And I've also heard from at least 3 clients that their journey to the void, although it was exceptional for them, and one of them said she actually even cried after that journey, the recording disappeared. So I do want to say to you, do use like a few different methods for the journey to the void, because clearly it's something important, because there wouldn't be just, one client, but some clients actually told me there was like sounds and voices on top of the recording. So we're on to something. And that is really fabulous, because during this period, I said we were going to learn about the mechanics of control here. And part of that is we have an eclipse today. Please read the blogs at galacticshamanastrologers.net and read all of the blogs so that you can see how I have been figuring this out and how I'm reframing the question of what we're doing here. And now I really do see this as an escape room. Like, the game is to try and figure out in this, what I'm going to call quantum computer, that is created by geometries, the reproducible fractals. The DMT researchers are really interesting to me. And one of my clients sent me 3 different videos from a DMT researcher. And I'm just going to get into it and let you see these videos. The first one is about the geometries, the fractals that repeat and create this. And that's one of the ways that I realized that we're in some kind of a quantum computer. So let's just go for it and see if we can get this information out.
Most insane trips of my life. Quick disclaimer, do not do this. As I'm going to share in this video, combining these psychedelics can have serious consequences. So this happened quite a while ago, and I combined 1 week tab of acid with 1 to 2 grams of shrooms, and I'd done this once before, so I thought I knew what to expect, but for whatever reason, this trip was on another level. So right from the beginning, my inner voice begins to disassociate from me, which basically means it sounded like it was somebody else talking to me. It started to tell me some insane information. I remember at one point it told me that there are these sacred symbols hidden in our environment around us that we just can't see when we're sober. And as soon as it said that, I literally could see these lines connecting in the tiles of my floor, and they formed these really weird looking symbols. And as soon as they were formed, they literally just lifted off the ground and then just hovered there for a few moments. At this point, I decided I'm going to go smoke some weed and meditate on the roof of my house to go even deeper. But I was not prepared for what was about to happen. So I'm sitting on the roof and I'm staring at a single point doing open-eyed meditation, and I start to get deeper and deeper when suddenly I'm just blinded by this flash of white light. As my eyes are adjusting and I see inside this light, I notice that there are entities looking back at me, smiling. I recognize them as the same entities I'd met on my DMT breakthrough, and they're actually very common entities to meet on psychedelics. They're called the machine elves. Most of the time, they don't actually look anything like their name. In this case, they were human-shaped beings made of light. They began to communicate with me, and this next part's pretty full on, so keep in mind I'm not saying what they told me is real or not. I'm just telling you what happened. They asked me if they could possess me, and as soon as I say yes, I get this feeling of something just moving about in the back of my mind. My inner voice then spoke, but it felt like the machine elves were actually talking to me through my inner voice. It told me the 3rd dimension is held together by focus, and said that if I let go of my focus, I'll leave the 3rd dimension. So at this stage, I've begun doing the open-eyed meditation again, so I'm staring forward at a single point, and somehow I do manage to just lose focus, which is hard to explain, but it's kind of like I look at a place between my vision. I can feel things are getting more and more intense, and because I'm sitting on the roof of my house, I can see all my neighbors' houses in my periphery. And all of a sudden, they just turn into these random shapes. They then lift off the ground and start circling, and then literally just get sucked into the middle of my vision, spat out as all these random spirals and shapes. Like, it was getting intense. I'm not exactly sure what happened after that, but the next thing I do remember is I'm in a completely new reality, surrounded by the machine elves, and I've actually become one of them now. They then start telling me what happens after we die, but this video has been long enough already, so I'll save that for part 2. On a completely different note, a big shout out to this video's sponsor.
Okay, so one of the rules that I keep is never to let anything possess me. No, I'm not letting anything into my consciousness. And in this video, he does not understand those rules. So actually the information that he gets is super interesting, but also note that Terence McKenna says that they are joyful tricksters. They're kind of like the Fae or the Elven or the elemental realms, and they're in the 4th dimension. So I do believe that they are aware and possibly part of the architecture of the symbols or the geometries that he's talking about that create this realm. And I still say this is all a screen, this is all digital. And what's interesting to me and how I really actually figured this out is when I found out that the biological human was going to have an operating system change with hardware and software installations. And I felt the morphogenetic field change, and the way that people are perceiving reality is completely different than the way that I'm perceiving reality. That's why I'm not trying to wake anyone up anymore, because they actually have new geometry in their bodies. And I've spoken about what that is, and you should read the blogs again at Galactic Shaman Astrologers. And also watch the video Mechanics of Control on Vimeo, because I have someone explaining hacking the human organism on that one. So that's how I know we're in some kind of a synthetic reality, is if you change the operating system inside the biological human, they're seeing a different reality, and I'm invisible to them at this point. But to me, that's fine, because I'm learning now what this game is and how it works with the architecture inside the body, not just the symbols on the floor as you saw, like lifting off. Let's watch this next one and pay really close attention to who is doing the life review, and that you get this whole review of your life when you meet these beings. They will appear to you however you understand them. So they'll come to you as Yeshua or Buddha or angels or men in black. When one of my clients said her near-death experience, they were just 3 men in black suits, and they basically went back through her life and guilted her and shamed about everything, and that you have to come back again. So they're tricksters. But let me tell you, this is all made up anyway, so there's no reason to keep coming back and having these traumatizing experiences. So you've got to figure out how to realize that if you go towards the light, you're going to meet these little tricksters, okay? So let's watch the next video.
Video I explained I entered the reality of the machine elves, and that's when they told me what happens after we die. There was quite a lot to this, but basically what they said was that when I die, I would enter the reality that I was in at that point. I would then become one of the machine elves, and I would travel back through my memories and watch my entire life. Now that is a super simplified version, because it was very complicated, and there was like other stuff as well. I remember they said that memories themselves were like this wormhole technology that allowed them to access different moments in time. They were just sharing lots of insane, weird sounding information like that. I should say though that after they were done communicating, I did feel like there was no reason to fear death at all, and I was definitely left with this like really positive feeling. Anyway, I leave the machine elf reality, come back into my body, and I realized that somehow I've gotten off the roof and I'm literally about to enter my room again, even though I'd been completely out of my body up until that moment. I'm losing control of myself fast, and so I just go inside, sit down, and do whatever I can to relax. But I begin to remember my DMT breakthrough, where I'd met the machine elves before. I'm able to remember them vividly, and all of a sudden, it's like they jump out of my memory and like possess me all over again. I start saying out loud what they told me on DMT, and I literally can't stop myself. I say, as these machine elves, we control everything. We are you, we are your neighbors, we are everything you perceive, and we are you perceiving it. we control everything. And that was basically it. After I'd said that, I felt them leave, and, you know, a few other stuff happened, but that was basically the end of, like, the major trippy stuff. Anyway, guys.
So these beings, whatever they are entities in a different realm. And this is part of why I had the real visceral experience that I no longer wanted to be a whore for the other dimensions. So when people were so upset that I divorced myself from my quote higher self, I don't think there is a higher or lower. I think these entities in other dimensions can pose as anything, can look like anything, and they pretend to be you. But remember, they had to ask him to possess him. So it actually is your ability to say, no, absolutely not. Because if they are you and all your neighbors and everything that we perceive, they're doing that through really an act of possession. And that's part of the whole quantum computer here. So our memories and our thoughts are actually a technology. Did you hear him say that? They're a wormhole technology. And as I've said, in astrology, the same possibilities repeat again and again and again. So once a month, Persephone's going to conjoin the moon. Once a month, she's going to conjoin the sun. Those are abduction asteroids. It's not like you deserved it, but then you'll play out that Persephone archetype, whether you like it or not, because these machine elves and the solar system are the matrix, and you're kind of the toy in this system. So in my world, the way to understand astrology is it's an escape room, or as one of my clients said, there's a movie called Prison Break, where a man broke into prison, mapped the whole schemata of the prison on his back, had that map, which was how he then helped his brother escape from prison. I do think that's the only thing we're doing here. And I do think that that's what the astrology is for, to know what asteroid archetypes you might be carrying that are suddenly going to be poisonous and really quite dangerous for you. And yeah, even like a great conjunction like Neptune conjunct Venus, Neptune very slowly moving over your natal Venus will be like this really intoxicating spiritual love, but it'll be a complete illusion. And I've had clients who have had that, and someone like is exalting them as the goddess, and then they realize that they're not seeing them as a real human. They're seeing them through this frame of Neptune, which is complete spiritual illusion. And yeah, that person might be in love with you and supplying all your fantasies and everything, but nothing's about it's real. And then afterwards, that client ends up leaving and going, oh God, that was horrible. He never saw me for the real person I was. So it's like, this is a game here. And the game for me is how to exit the matrix, because without them possessing us, this whole thing is going to collapse. That's why we have to know what the mechanics are. The next video is of a person who uses the Amanita, which is a deliriant. It takes him into the lower realms, but still I think there's a lot of accuracy here in that he describes that we're actually in hell. It's kind of a heavy video, but I have been told basically from my mother since I was a child that this is hell. This is hell. So when you're in hell, it can be interesting. It's kind of fun to figure it out. So let's see what they have to say here.
This is one of the scariest reports I've ever read. One thing to keep in mind, guys, Amanita muscaria is a deliriant, not a psychedelic, as I accidentally said in the past. The reason that's important is because deliriants tend to induce far more negative and dangerous mindsets than psychedelics, as you're going to see at the end of this. The author of this report took about 20 grams of this mushroom, and at first it didn't look like it was actually working. But then 2 hours in, his vision starts to click on and off, as if somebody's flipping a light switch every second. This began happening faster and faster until he couldn't handle it anymore. He decided the best thing to do would be to go to bed and try to fall asleep until his vision returned to normal, but as he stood up to go to bed, This strobe effect was replaced by something far more intense. After the author had stood up, he was hit with this weird sensation that at the same moment kept repeating itself over and over again. He was caught in a loop, and it's here that he says he completely lost his mind. He comes to the conclusion that he's in hell, which he describes as the realization that your entire life up until this moment right now is a false memory, and in fact that the only thing that is real is the moment right now itself. Now, I've actually talked about this next part in a previous video, and I thought he'd fallen asleep to experience this because Amanita is a dream drug, but after rereading this, I realized he actually went through this while he was completely awake, which actually makes this more intense. At this point, he felt like his consciousness floated out of his body, and he was taken to somewhere else altogether where he could see the universe below him. The universe was this giant loop with different segments in it, kind of like a roller coaster track. Each segment represented a different life that he'd lived, starting at his birth and ending at the moment he realized he was in hell. And he could see that he was kind of doomed to just repeat this process and live in an imaginary life over and over again for all eternity. Now, this is where it gets really dangerous. He believed nothing mattered anymore because the past and future were fake, and he had no concern for the well-being of other people because he believed they were all imaginary. He decides to go outside to try and distract himself and leave hell and runs.
So I stopped it there because he does do some dangerous situations at that point. And I would say, though, what's really important about this is the fact, as I discussed with Kira in his Dark Materials, that this is not a karmic realm. We're not in a God realm. There is no one who is actually being judged. The machine elves know that this is all wormhole technology anyway, so all the past is an illusion. All your thoughts are an illusion. All your memories are an illusion. And so as a result, you're in this realm, but they're such tricksters. There's nothing they can judge because we're actually in a hell realm, which is why there are beings here like Hill R.E., which I wrote about in my blog for this eclipse. So she can exist however she wants to exist, and there aren't any ramifications. In fact, all we do is loop again and again and again. And we know from astrology that every 26,000 years, the exact same loop will happen again and again and again with the same asteroid archetypes and everything. But in that, space, when you're here, you think you're evolving or you're in a mission or we're going to ascend to a higher consciousness. Remember, the way that even the Voyagers materials explained Yeshua is Yeshua was just getting people out of here, which was called ascending, but it was actually called exiting. All Yeshua did, not the biblical person who was allegedly crucified, that's all made up too, but apparently the avatar, all that was going on was him getting people out of the prison. So there is no group planetary ascension because we're in a quantum computer. The only thing there is for you to figure out the mechanics here and leave. And that's fun. That's exciting. So I'm going to try and get this video to save and see if I can post it. So I want to hear from you. And people who are booking sessions with me right now mostly just want to be seen and acknowledged because many of them have known this since they were children. So this is very exciting. Okay, bye-bye.